All right, so this lecture is going to be once again about Roman concrete and how it was used to make that amazing dome on the Roman Pantheon. Okay, so I'll very quickly go through this slide that we looked at in class yesterday. Uh, Once again, Roman concrete, after Nero's fire destroys much of Rome, concrete becomes the dominant building material because it's relatively flame proof, but it has other benefits. It's very cheap, lightweight to transport compared to bricks, marble, whatnot. It is easy to build with. Bricklaying would be a skilled craft as well as carving marble. Not everybody could do that, but you could basically have some semi-skilled workers to pack concrete into molds. So it's cheaper in that way. And once again, you would never see this concrete. Now, when you go to Rome, you will see some exposed concrete on the buildings. But during the Roman Empire, that material that was purely functional would be covered with more aesthetic materials like brick, marble, stone, and whatnot. Okay, so remember, Roman concrete, incredibly superior to what we have today. The Pantheon is almost 2,000 years old, built in the 2nd century CE, and modern concrete really is expected to last 100 years tops. Okay, so let's talk about why Roman concrete was so superior to our own concrete. All right, so over here on the left, we have some diagrams attempting to show uh, how Roman concrete structures were built. You don't need to know any of these terms over here. And then we have a photo of an exposed concrete archway here. Okay, so first of all, modern concrete is poured. It's kind of a slurry, a sort of yogurt-like consistency, and it's poured into usually wooden or metal molds to make forms. Roman concrete was actually uh, quite thick and not very pourable. It was almost more of a putty. You might think of it like cookie dough. Okay, and so it was a low moisture mixture. And on top of that, you can really see here in these diagrams, but then more so in this archway here, it was just jam-packed full of stones and pottery shards. So it really was not, it wasn't even largely concrete. In a way, it was a mixture of rocks and mortar that was literally pounded down into forms to create the arches and walls of buildings. So you would have these workers who wore these kind of padded uh, discs on their fists, so to speak. These almost like think of them a bit like boxing gloves, and they would just um, literally like pound or punch these stones and cookie dough like consistency concrete down into these molds. Okay, so it's very dense, um, less prone to cracking than our modern material, and on top of that, it was never exposed to the elements like modern concrete. These days, you cast a concrete foundation to a house, or you make a highway overpass in concrete. It's almost always totally exposed. The Romans would always, always, always face it with brick or stone. You can kind of see that in these diagrams here. You can see how the facing material was actually part of the concrete wall, really kind of interlaced or embedded into that concrete. Okay, the result of this was very strong structures. Often these walls would be many feet thick on top of that. Um, and the last major difference between Roman and modern concrete was that the Romans did not use any reinforcing structures in the inside of their concrete. Modern concrete relies on metal rebar inside of it to kind of reinforce it. The downside of this is that concrete expands and contracts due to heat, and when it does that, it expands and contracts around that embedded metal armature. And this often causes cracks to occur, sometimes really quickly after the concrete has been poured. And the Romans did not do that at all. Okay, so this is our big concrete uh, structure here, the Pantheon, High Imperial Roman Empire. Um, it was built in the I want to say it's first quarter of the second century CE, early on in the second century. And once again, it is marble faced concrete. The we've already looked at one concrete structure, the Colosseum, but we're going to talk about concrete more in reference to the Pantheon because that material contributes more to the unique design of the Pantheon than it did with the Colosseum. Okay, so first of all, the idea of the Pantheon. If you don't already know that the name Pantheon means across the gods or all of the gods, okay? This was really a temple to all of the Olympian gods, okay? Or I shouldn't say Olympian per se, but all of the traditional Greco-Roman gods. It's possible that it was not actually intended to be devoted to all of them, but we do know there were many gods who this temple was dedicated to, including the divine Julius Caesar. Before we move on, I just want to point out how the ground level is right at the height of the porch. I'm going to come back to that, but initially the ground was much lower, and there was many steps that led up to the porch of the Pantheon. We'll talk about that later. Okay, we don't know for sure who designed the Pantheon. The traditional timeline of the Pantheon is that it was designed and built during Hadrian's reign as emperor, but recently there has been some analysis of a lot of the bricks used in the structure, and they actually date to Trajan's reign, which could mean that Trajan started this structure and it was perhaps finished by Hadrian, which could point to Trajan's favorite architect, Apollodorus of Damascus, as being the person who actually designed this structure. Okay, this is neither here nor there, but the Pantheon actually replaced two previous Pantheons on the same site that had been destroyed by fire. If any of you can see this inscription, you might notice the name M. Agrippa or Marcus Agrippa. He was sort of like Augustus's right hand man, and Marcus Agrippa is actually the one who commissioned the building of the original Pantheon that was on this site. Now we don't know much about what those two previous pantheons looked like, but it's not believed that they uh, really possess the architectural splendor of the current one. Okay, so when we talk about the Pantheon, it really is a work in which we're talking about design and really amazing design. As we look at the plan of the Pantheon over here, you notice the circular drum here, or this circular space back here. We call this a rotunda, circular room. And then there are a few squares or rectangular spaces, the portico. And then if we go back here, you can see there is this kind of square protrusion off of the rotunda. Okay. When we go inside the Pantheon, we're going to see those circles and squares repeated throughout. Okay. Here we are looking at the dome. It's pretty amazing. Remember, this dome is entirely made of concrete. It's 142 feet wide and tall. Okay, this makes it the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome, meaning there's no other structure holding it up. There's no metal or anything like that. One of the ways in which the Romans were able to accomplish this is by being very intentional with the makeup and the thickness of the concrete in this dome. Um, and this is another way in which Roman concrete construction is radically different from our own concrete construction. We use concrete today for speed and cheapness of construction, and the Romans were doing the same thing, but just not nearly to the degree that we do today. Uh, the for one, the thickness of the dome tapers and becomes actually quite thin at the top of the dome. Uh, Beyond that, the stones that are mixed in with the concrete, um, as you near the top, they start to become phased. The heavy, dense stones become phased out and replaced with volcanic rock, which if you've ever handled volcanic rock, you know it's sponge-like, remarkably light. Some volcanic rock will even float in water. So the higher we go up in the concrete dome, the lighter and less dense the structure becomes. Okay. It's a little hard to make out here, but you can see a lot of holes in the face and in the pediment. There was once a bronze eagle and wreath, which was a symbol of Jupiter. There were probably many other pagan uh, type sculptures in the pediment, perhaps even up here. All of that's been lost to time, taken down by the Christians that actually converted the Pantheon into a church. So this is actually a case of the early Christians preserving some of our amazing pagan architecture. And if you go to Rome today, go to the Pantheon, you'll see that it's still a Catholic church. When we go inside, you'll see, I think I have some photos here of the Catholic altar, and you're likely to go in there and see people praying. I know it's used for holidays. I believe it is just a regular church used for any usual Sunday service. Okay, and this is just about the inscription of Marcus Agrippa, and we'll move on because that's not of great importance. Okay, so this is the part where I will try to explain to you the original base of the Pantheon. And students in years past have had a really difficult time understanding this, so I will try hard to help you understand it. Um, Today, you can uh, walk around here to uh, get to the Pantheon, so you can see the rotunda before you even reach the portico. Initially, it was completely surrounded by a walled courtyard, and the only way you could approach the Pantheon was from the front. Okay, so you would enter a courtyard similar to what we see in this model up here, but not exactly. You would enter this way, and the ground level was much lower than it is today. The ground around the Pantheon has essentially been built up. Okay, so rather than being at porch level, you would look up at this massive staircase. So the Pantheon would be sort of up in the sky, and it would look something like this. Okay, you would not even be able to see the rotunda from your kind of controlled point of view. Okay, so um, the effect would have is you feel like you're looking at a typical Greco-Roman type, post and lintel temple here. Okay, it's all very square. And then you would enter the space, and there would be this incredible, sort of awe-inspiring round interior and a massive interior also. Something that, a dome is another version of Roman vaulted interiors. It really is sort of a rotated uh, barrel vault, so to speak. Oops. Okay, so you would enter a space like this, okay? It would be huge, a space unlike anything you had probably ever seen before. Rounded walls. On the floor here, you can see that circle and square motif repeated. The effect here is that you have a very unified design through the simple repetition of the circle and the square. And here we find it in inlaid color marble, very exquisite material. All the way around, you have these niches that would have had, statues of gods such as the divine Julius Caesar, uh, Jupiter, and so forth. Now, of course, they've all been replaced with Catholic saints. Okay. And then probably immediately your eye would be drawn upwards to the oculus. Okay. And the oculus is a quite literally an opening in the dome. There's no glass in it. It is open air. It's 30 feet wide. Okay. Um, and it rains inside the Pantheon through that hole. Um, Birds fly into the Pantheon. When I was there a few years ago, there were pigeons sitting up in these little niches and things. Okay, but what's important here is we call it an oculus. Okay, it really is the eye at the top of the dome. All right. You can see down here this sort of solar disk. Uh, as the day progresses, this solar disk revolves around the dome. Okay, so you can really kind of follow the sun through this optical effect. All right, it really does look a bit like an eyeball when you look at it at this close up, don't you think? Uh, More design stuff. Once again, I just want to point out we have the repetition of the circle and then all these little squares. These little sort of recesses are called coffers. They do two things. One, they're actual recessed spaces, so they lighten the load of the dome even more. But they also add some visual complexity. Okay, so you have all this like rich shadow and geometry that happens here, but then they end interestingly. They give your eye a little bit of rest before you get to the bright uh, aperture of the oculus. We have some Renaissance era drawings and paintings of the interior of the Pantheon that show that these were originally filled with little gilded, probably bronze rosettes, um, but those are lost to time also. Okay. All right, so let's look at a little plan here, or I'm sorry, a little cutaway side view. Uh, Remember I said that you can perfectly fit a sphere inside the Pantheon. That's no joke. The interior is a perfect sphere. Okay, now that I know that makes sense when we look at the dome, um, but what's interesting is the floor actually has a bevel, and this has been calculated from what I understand, and the curvature is exactly spherical. So, this could be interpreted in a few ways. Um, the popular interpretation of this is that since we are in a temple devoted to all of the gods, uh, in a way we have uh, the concerns of the entire cosmos or the entire heavens in this one temple. So, in a way, the pantheon contains the cosmos, the sphere of the cosmos here. That may be stretching it, but nonetheless, it is true that it is spherical in its design. Uh, the concave floor, while it may be concave to accommodate this spherical design, it also has the added benefit of drainage. Remember, rain pours right into the oculus, so we need to have drainage on the floor, and the water will cuddle, will puddle and run uh, to the middle of the floor and drain out. Okay. The Pantheon is really one of the most remarkable buildings that has survived since antiquity. It has inspired many other buildings built from the Renaissance through the neoclassical period in the 18th and 19th century. I just want to show you a few of those. Some you may be familiar with, some we may talk about later in the year. There's the Paris Pantheon. You're going to see, a similar structure in all these buildings, cl- clear classical influence with some sort of centralized dome. There's St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This is the building that replaced old St. Peter's that we looked at very briefly in reference to Trajan's Forum in the Basilica there. So this is what is now the mother church of Catholicism. Villa Rotunda in Venice. This is a Venetian Renaissance building. The Jefferson Rotunda at University of Virginia, actually designed by Thomas Jefferson. We won't talk about this building by Jefferson, but we will talk about Monticello much later on. The National Gallery in Washington, D.C. The Reichstag building in Berlin, the capital of Germany, or the Capitol building of Germany. Okay. All right, so that is it for the Pantheon. So thank you for watching.